West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And Jamie, what's remarkable here is that it appears that it is well documented now the former president's inaction that day for a number of hours from multiple sources, first-hand sources. You have new reporting. What are you learning?
So first of all, let's just put it out there. This is bad news for Donald Trump. So in addition to what Congresswoman Cheney said, a person with knowledge of the investigation has told me that the January 6th committee has information from multiple sources with firsthand knowledge. So not just one source. And that these sources describe what President Trump, as you said, was saying, doing, and not doing during the riot. The source said, quote, "There's a collection of people with relevant information." Translation, firsthand indicates someone with direct contact or knowledge. It could be someone who is in the room, someone on the phone, someone with just direct firsthand information. Bottom line, the committee has broken through Trump's wall.
Right. And Jamie, do you have any indication as to who some of these people might be?
So we don't know about a lot of people. More than 300 people have testified. But there's one witness who has publicly given a deposition to the committee, and that's Keith Kellogg, former Vice President Mike Pence's national security advisor, who was actually with Trump in the White House when the riot was going on. The national security advisor, the normal one, Robert O'Brien, was on the road, so Kellogg was filling in. And our colleague, Alex Marquardt, reached out to Kellogg, who told him, he confirmed that he testified under oath to the January 6th committee. He is cooperating, but he declined to comment about the substance of his deposition. Just for context, Kellogg is an interesting witness because he's considered a Trump loyalist, but he's also a retired general who I'm told takes his testimony seriously. Again, he was in the room with Donald Trump during the riot.
So this is a consistent message from the committee. Right. Why in particular are they underscoring this right now?
Right. So my understanding is this is part of the committee's strategy to let Trump know. They are sending a message that people who are in the room, possibly his inner circle, are cooperating. It's a warning to Trump that even as some people like Steve Bannon are delaying, trying to defy the committee is still getting critical firsthand evidence. And I would also say it sends a message to others in Trump world that key people are cooperating. They should cooperate too. That's not to say the committee doesn't want information like the documents from the National Archives. Clearly they do. But this is a warning to Donald Trump that pieces of the puzzle are coming together from behind the wall.
Yeah, and perhaps that more people than he even knows have come forward and revealed information.
Absolutely.
Jamie and Gail, fascinating as always. Thank you so much.
Joining us now to discuss, Scott Jennings. He's former special assistant to President George W. Bush, also worked for a long time for Mitch McConnell. Scott, always good to have you on. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So I should note for our viewers that you, as well as your former boss McConnell, have publicly condemned January 6th and also criticized Trump for his role in that, although, of course, McConnell did not vote to impeach here. I wonder, as you hear that reporting there about the pieces coming together, about, at a minimum, the president's inaction on the day of January 6th, are there enough puzzle pieces to come together, in your view, for the Republican Party, for the leaders across the board to step away from Trump?
Well, it's a great question. I think the reckoning on this will come in 2024 if he seeks the nomination for the presidency again. I mean, look, I voted for him twice. I'm quite pleased with most of the policy outcomes of the Trump administration. But what's become clear is that he violated his oath of office. And I think we already knew a lot of this. He did not act on that day to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. It is in his oath of office. And so as a party, Jim, what we're going to end up having to reckon with here is, can you return someone to the White House? Will you support someone going back to the White House who, in a moment of crisis, chose to violate their oath of office? It says, to the best of my ability. And I don't think, based on this reporting and based on what we already know, anyone could argue that he acted to do his oath of office to the best of his ability.
And Scott, according to at least Liz Cheney, the answer to your question as to whether he can return to the Oval Office and become president again of the United States given his inaction is no. But it's not just from people like yourselves or Mitch McConnell that we heard condemn those inactions. The days and the hours following the insurrection, we heard from Kevin McCarthy. Now we heard, thanks to Liz Cheney over the weekend, saying that Ivanka Trump went in twice to tell her father to do something. And the same with Mark Meadows, getting text messages from Donald Trump Jr., having his dad stop it if he can, please. And yet just days and weeks after that, the situation seemed to change. Why do you think that is? And what message are voters and Trump supporters sending?
Well, I mean, obviously, Donald Trump has stayed on his course and stayed on his message that the election was stolen. And he is the most influential Republican in the country. The grassroots of the Republican Party see him as the leader of the party, and they are more inclined to believe what he says about this matter than, anyone in Congress or me or anyone else for that matter. And so as long as that is the case, that is going to be the prevailing opinion. It's not everybody's opinion in the Republican Party, but if you go out to a party meeting these days, you'll find a lot of people who not only agree with Donald Trump that the election was stolen, but believe he should be returned to the presidency. Now, I assume we're going to have a big primary about this in 2024. If I had to put money on it today, I'd say Trump's the odds-on favorite to be the nominee. But surely somebody will stand up to this man and say, I liked a lot of what you did, but January 6th was an unforgivable day.
So I suppose the question then is who, right? I mean, over the weekend, Peter Meyer, one of the 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach former Trump and now drawing ire from the former president and some of his supporters, said, echoing you, at the end of the day, there's no other option right now in the Republican Party. It's a sad testament. Is there really no other option? Handicap this if you can. Who could stand up?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I totally disagree with that statement. I mean, I understand his analysis, which at the moment, if a primary were held, it's obvious Donald Trump would be the nominee. But we have a number of people who could not only execute the same policies you loved about Donald Trump, but also not violate their oath of office in the process. I mean, you look at the governor of Florida, DeSantis. You look at Tim Scott of South Carolina. You look at Nikki Haley. You look at Ted Cruz. Go down the line. We have a number of highly qualified Mike Pence. We have a number of highly qualified Republicans who could fulfill the duties of this office, win a national election, and not drag this January 6th baggage into another national election. I actually believe Trump, there's some small chance he could win a national election in 2024. But as a Republican Party, is that what's best for us? Is that what's best for the country? I argue, and I think many Republicans believe, but maybe can't say out loud, there's a whole raft of people that could do this, win an election, and fulfill the policy goals that we have without dragging all this baggage along.
goes back to Jim's question, though. Who? I guess time will tell. Scott Jennings, thank you as always.
I think. Well, I will just say. I think many people are going to run. I don't think he's going to get a pass. Now, whether they beat him or not, I don't know. But I think you're going to see people file who aren't, sort of from the never Trump land. But people who legitimately can say, I voted for Trump. I support the policies, but we can't win with it. I think you're going to see candidacies like that come forward. The question is, can they be successful?
We'll see, right? Because one commonality among that list you mentioned, right, is that none of those potential candidates has said decisively, I will not stand for this, as you just said there. That'll be a big test as we get close to 2024.
It is Thursday, the 6th of January of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, it is the beginning of the year, and do you ever have one of those like little brain worms where you think, wow, have I been saying it's 2021 still in these announcements? Because there is a bit of muscle memory there. And when you get old like us, you rely on that muscle memory, and sometimes you got to change. You got to make a new muscle memory. Okay, I guess we will. Anyway, if I have mistakenly called this year the previous year, I apologize, really. Okay, so looks like Joe came out today, and I think he's going to get Trump pretty darn mad. Oh, yeah. Basically saying he's an unprincipled oaf who's aligned himself with mobsters, domestic and foreign. Yep, and, I would go a bit further maybe and say that there's a lot of people who think like that, who seem to have voted for him and still idolize that fellow as if he's, I don't know, what? Damien. That's what I always thought. That's not Donald Trump, that's Damien. A little evil rich boy. Come to exact, the retribution that I guess we so justly deserve. Well, good for Joe. Because that's why he's president of the United States. That is why Putin et al. Wanted to make sure that they tried to dirty up Joe as much as they could, and they couldn't, so they went after his kids. While the rest of us are supposed to ignore that, like Trump's kids are actually pretty evil. They don't fulfill that children of the corn meme for nothing. Jeez. The lifeless eyes, the soullessness. Yeah. And the self-interest, too, above all. I guess we could say that we're still in big trouble. But I would also want to assure us to a certain degree that in spite of all the misgivings and not quite, I don't know if I can believe this, I don't know if I can trust this attitude about Merrick Garland's announcement, I actually took away something a little bit different than what seemed to be the prevailing opinion. The prevailing opinion being, he didn't tell us anything specific. Well, he's not going to. Who do you think he is? Bill Barr? Jeff Sessions? I mean, Merrick Garland, if anything, is an institutionalist, and he is not going to get pretty detailed about ongoing investigations. But I got to tell you, for an institutionalist, I thought he was screaming it pretty loud and clear. And I wasn't the only one who picked up on certain things. I mean, he's going to speak in a kind of code, but only that code that he can really... I suppose in this day and age where rules don't matter, we look at the people who follow the rules as being some sort of, there's something wrong with them. What are they trying to hide? They're not. They're being very forthright. But in an investigation, you certainly don't tip your cards. I know that there's, in past investigations, when someone is under investigation, when they're interviewed or whatnot, they sort of get tipped that they have worse things to come, and then those perps go straight to the press and say there's an investigation on this fellow. Say it off the, it's off the QT, okay? And so then the media runs with that, and the media has been out there saying there's no evidence that Merrick Garland is going after anybody in Trump's inner circle. Well, you know what? I bet he is. Just because they haven't tipped them off yet that they're under investigation, I think they're listening to a lot of tapes. And when he talked about building the foundation or the evidentiary foundation, like a pyramid, you're going to go up to the pinnacle at some point and you'll have that capstone. Otherwise, it's an unfinished pyramid. Now, I know that the intimation was also for as long as it takes. And one could say, well, you won't be doing it, and there won't be any of this when, the Nazis take over. Do you really think that the gears of our democracy will keep grinding on? No. They're going to throw a monkey wrench in it, and we're going to lurch to a stop. We still have Trump holdovers. We're going to report on a little one of those stories here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up. But one of the first things that Trump did was to gut all the apparatus and mechanisms of our government. All the people that made up those gears, that made up that bureaucracy to keep people like him from taking over, were duly dismissed. So, we are not that, unfortunately. But if Merrick Garland thinks that he's going to continue on with that investigation, and even when he's gone, there's going to be good people there to continue on with the investigation, all I can say is look what happened to the Russia investigation in the FBI. Dirtied those people up. Oh my God, those people too were having an affair. Well, Trump paid off a porn star in public view. They're pointing at a couple having an affair as if there's something bad about that, while Trump paid off a porn star. And he probably paid a couple of hookers in Moscow to pee on a bed, too. I know. There's no real evidence for it, but I believe it. Something Trump would do. I mean, look at the people he runs around with. He went to Studio 54, my God! They were peeing on beds way back then. Now, trust me, how would I know? I don't know. How would I? But he took a certain glee in it. And why? Because they were peeing on a bed that Michelle and Obama and Michelle and Barack had slept on when they were, in that Moscow hotel. Trump is top dog. Okay, let's be clear. That's how he is. He can never be wrong. Sounds like a few other dictators we know. Right down to the Proud Boy stormtrooper connection. Send a bunch of ex-military out into the streets to kick people's ass. Well, that was the black shirts, too. The brown shirts and the black shirts. So, stormtroopers were the SA. And they, of course, as we all know, had they weren't as orderly as the SS, the Gestapo. But the SA, stormtroopers, Proud Boys, they serve a purpose. And part of that is just creating some chaos and mayhem locally on the streets so that people are cowards or cowering, pretending it's not happening. And if it is, well, at least it's not happening to me. And one of the best ways to keep it from happening to me is to take part in it. So now we have about 71 million people who are taking part in it. Everybody is a stormtrooper in their castle. They're the stormtrooper of their castle. I don't know. Or their eagle's nest, depending on what kind of Madison Cawthorn meme we're going for today. Yeah, we're jumping around. It's Thursday. But that's what we do here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We're a salon. Everything is up for discussion. But we do have somewhat of a linear story to tell. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm confessing. Linear? How conservative. Yes, we do. And today is a day that will live in infamy. And I know that Trump is out there gloating right now. I mean, reports are when it was happening, he couldn't keep his hand off the rewind button because he wanted to see it over and over and over. Look what they're doing for me. They're willing to topple the United States of America for me. I must be top dog. And now he's out on the world stage. Oh, yeah, I endorse Orban. Well, Jesus, why don't you just endorse any of... Well, why not Pol Pot? I'll tell you why not Pol Pot, because Pol Pot's not white. But he might have Pol Pot, as a friend, going around and interviewing some local election officials, intimidating them. Yeah, we're going to have to re-educate you. You wear glasses. Obviously, you're an elite. That's how it happened, in Pol Pot's regime. If you wore glasses, you might be an intellectual, and they had to get rid of you, re-educate you, put you on a work farm. Mm-hmm. And so Trump is endorsing that. Except, a little bit colder environments. I guess it's colder. I think it would be. There's no jungles there where Orban's doing his Orbaning. Viktor Orban. Can you believe that? Trump is endorsing Viktor Orban. God. Well, he had Roy Cohn as a friend, and then, when Roy Cohn stopped serving his purpose, he dropped him like a wet potato. I don't know why wet potato, but it sounds good to say on a Thursday morning. Not that Roy Cohn should not have been dropped like a wet potato. I mean, obviously he should have. He should have been from height. Jeez, after all, Roy Cohn. Do we keep allowing these people to get away with it? I guess we do. Look at Roger Stone is, the physical manifestation of maybe Roy Cohn's idea of an American stormtrooper. Kind of clownish in a way, but that's America. we're a nation of carnival barkers. Step right up. Well, some of us are, because some of us, have to be the carnival barkers, and obviously some of us have to be barked at. Otherwise, it wouldn't be America. Okay, enough of that pontificating. What do we have in store for you today? Well, at the top, there's more bad news for Trump as new information shows that there are multiple sources with firsthand knowledge of his activities during the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. That is so nice to hear. Now, some may say that Garland is waiting until Congress finishes their job. Well, I don't think he's actually waiting. But he's waiting until, we get done with the people's work, and then he can start indicting people for criminal behavior. On the rest of the menu, in another Biden in disarray story, the December jobs report from payroll company ADP surpassed economists' expectations by more than double. Biden is doing so terribly. Yeah, I wish we could hear more about that jobs report. Remember when we'd hear minuscule little jobs reports where Trump actually lost jobs and they touted as presidential because he only lost a little? And it wasn't really a little, but, hey. Yeah. Gaslighting much? Trump even had a Department of Gaslighting. Ugh. Virginia officials were a little icy as they defended their response to the 30-hour snowy gridlock on I-95. See what I did there? And the Trump-appointed U.S. prisons director is finally resigning after a crises-filled tenure. After the break, we move to the chef's table where the U.S. announced sanctions against Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik, accusing him of corrupt activities that threaten to destabilize the region. And Justin Trudeau says Canadians are so angered at anti-vaxxers, he's promised them even more tests, just to show them who's boss. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link. And that chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And Kelly does a lot more than just monitor the chat room. Okay, check out her shows too. Okay, At the Table, 523 Happy Hour, even the late night morning show with Ricky. Hey. So thank you, Kelly. That's not all that she does. She does so much more too. So thank you. If you would look across the page to the left from the chat room link, you'll then notice the link to our Patreon page. If you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could help us by maybe sending us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, if you could send those funds to us once a month, it really helps. I can't tell you how much it helps. And thank you to those of you who have been so generous. Jeez. Every bit helps put a chink into the ever-increasing costs of running this little powerhouse of resistance. Yeah, we follow the rules. We pay our bills. We're not like those scofflaws, deadbeats. So thank you for helping us continue. We would truly be unable to do it without you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and we are forever indebted to Tom for all that he does as well. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I just happen to post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I try really hard to get that posted up, before showtime, but usually it's while that clip at the top is going is when I finally get it on Twitter, or maybe during a break. So I do get it up on social media, but the show notes and links are critical to this multimedia operation. I mean, if we got an overhead projector, we got to have show notes and links too, so you know what really was reported. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio, if you'd like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and our archive at the Internet Archive. So check that out. Links provided in the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes, just so you know. Actually, where podcasts are will be landing again on Spreaker real soon. Once again, I apologize for the delay. It's a lot of work. Jeez. I mean, my shows are voluminous in and of themselves, but I realize that over the almost 11 years, we've had a lot of shows that we've had. and friends who had to go on to better pastures, in the great beyond even. So want to make sure that those are archived for prosperity. Or is it posterity? Yeah, posterity. What am I for prosperity? I wish it was prosperous. But anyway, for posterity. And it's work. And the machinery, I don't know, maybe it's just my machinery. Or the machinery here at the mothership. And because they are getting kind of old. But it takes a bit of time just to physically get and grab things from Spreaker, because that will be lost in the ether unless I, stash them somewhere. And so there's been a bit of delay. The actual physical work is taking considerably longer than I thought it would. Plus, there's all the other aspects of making sure that the station is up and running and content is retrieved and formatted and letters and emails are written and sent out and all the other stuff that we do to make sure that this little powerhouse of resistance continues its resistance power. So I hope to get podcasts of this week up maybe tomorrow or Saturday. I apologize. No, I won't go into the actual details because it might reveal that I'm doing something wrong, and we don't want that. Oh no, we don't want to admit we did anything wrong. But yeah, it's tedious. So we'll just put it at that. Okay. Shall we not tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because we have it all teed up. Yeah, it's tea time. Okay, Josh Axelrod of the American Independent brings us this first offering. The economy added 807,000 private sector jobs in December, more than double what economists had forecasted, providing more grist for claims that President Joe Biden's American Rescue Plan is boosting economic recovery, and somehow that is bad. Not to Josh Axelrod here, but to the usual suspects. Economists polled by the Wall Street Journal predicted only modest gains of 375,000 jobs, but the ADP employment report, released yesterday morning by the payroll company, signaled the economy's second highest private jobs tally since May. Last month, private sector jobs grew by 534,000. By my reckoning, that's more than 500,000. The White House cheered on the news, pointing to the report as more evidence of a Biden economic boom. And, of course, the media said, he's in disarray. He's such a doddering old fool. He doesn't know what's going on. Robert J. Shapiro, a columnist for the Washington Monthly, who worked as an economics advisor for both the Obama and Clinton administrations, wrote in December that few have noted the Biden boom, even as Biden has overseen the largest real GDP growth rate in the century. During the first 3 quarters of 2021, real GDP increased at almost 8% annually, compared to an average of 2.2% growth from 2000 to 2019. A December report from the Roosevelt Institute found that Biden's signature legislative accomplishment, a $1.9 trillion COVID stimulus bill passed in March that is called the American Rescue Plan, spurred massive job growth while protecting the economy from the pandemic's worst ill effects. And of course the Republicans have to tear that down. A success for Biden. People are actually prospering. We can't have that. We can't hold on to power if they have that. But Republicans continue to hammer Biden on the economy. Joe Biden just claimed the U.S. entering 2022 in a position of unique economic strength. GOP Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel wrote on Twitter with a really weird accent that has nothing to do with how she speaks. But, hey, that's just me. The facts. Inflation is highest in 39 years. Job growth has stalled, and the supply chain is in crisis. Well, first of all, it looks like job growth is booming. The supply chain, I don't know what you're talking about. And inflation, once again, it's price gouging. It's not so much inflation. You can call it that, though, because some economic experts beg to differ. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who was nominated by Trump, cheered the falling employment rate in December, saying, amid improving labor market conditions and very strong demand for workers, the economy has been making rapid progress toward maximum employment. Rankin and Denise Lavoie of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Virginia officials defending their response to a blizzard that stranded hundreds of motorists along a major interstate highway said conditions for the gridlock were caused by a combination of unusually heavy snowfall, plunging temperatures, and a rainy start that kept them from pre-treating the roads. There were no reported deaths or injuries from the calamity on Interstate 95, one of the nation's busiest highways, but plenty of outrage from motorists, some of whom were stranded overnight Monday into Tuesday, posting pleas for help on social media. That makes it sound like, oh, it was only a few hours. No, it wasn't just overnight. We're talking 30 hours in some cases. On Wednesday evening, Northam declared a state of emergency in advance of another storm expected to bring more winter weather to the state beginning tonight. Many areas have snow left over from the Monday storm. Problems began Monday when a truck jackknifed on I-95 between Richmond and Washington, triggering a chain reaction as other vehicles lost control. You know, you could probably blame it on the truck driver. But I don't know the whole conditions. Well, what I'm saying is that we don't know the behavior of the other motorists around that might have caused the guy to lock up. But you never know. Everybody slow down, okay? When there's that much weather, slow down. Lanes in both directions eventually became blocked along an approximately 40-mile stretch of I-95 between Richmond and Washington, D.C. As hours passed and night fell, motorists posted messages on social media about running out of fuel, food, and water. And Michael R. Sissick of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons is resigning amid increasing scrutiny over his leadership in the wake of an Associated Press reporting that uncovered widespread problems at the agency, including a recent story detailing serious misconduct involving correctional officers. Michael Carvajal, a Trump administration holdover. Now to DeJoy. If we can get rid of this guy, get rid of DeJoy. Oh, he won't resign on his own? Darn. This Trump administration holdover, who's been at the center of myriad crises within the federal prison system, has told Attorney General Merrick Garland he is resigning. He will stay on for an interim period until a successor is in place. It is unclear how long that process would take. Well, you know what? I think you should just give him a severance package and say, thank you. Thank you for your service. Hope to see you again real soon in handcuffs. His exit comes just weeks after the AP revealed more than 100 Bureau of Prisons workers have been arrested, convicted, or sentenced for crimes since the start of 2019, including a warden charged with sexually abusing an inmate. The AP stories pushed Congress into investigating and prompted increased calls to resign by lawmakers, including the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Carvajal's tumultuous tenure included a rampant spread of coronavirus inside federal prisons, a failed response to the pandemic, dozens of escapes, deaths, and critically low staffing levels that have hampered responses to emergencies. Deaths? You mean like Epstein's? One can only wonder. We are very appreciative of Director Carvajal's service to the department over the last 3 decades. Justice Department spokesman Anthony Coley said in a statement, his operational experience and intimate knowledge of the Bureau of Prisons, the department's largest component, helped steer it during critical times, including during this historic pandemic. What? Steered it right into the coral reef? The administration had faced increasing pressure to remove Carvajal and do more to fix the federal prison system after Joe Biden's campaign promised to push criminal justice reforms. The Bureau of Prisons is the largest Justice Department agency, budgeted for around 37,500 employees and over 150,000 federal prisoners. Carvajal presided over an extraordinary time of increased federal executions and a pandemic that ravaged the system. In a statement, Dick Durbin said Carvajal has failed to address the mounting crises in our nation's federal prison system, including failing to fully implement the landmark First Step Act, a bipartisan criminal justice measure passed during the Trump administration that was meant to improve prison programs and reduce sentencing disparities. His resignation is an opportunity for new reform-minded leadership at the Bureau of Prisons, Durbin said. Well, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Salvador Dali had a peculiar way of refreshing his mind, something he called slumber with a key. In his 1948 book, 50 Secrets of Magic Craftsmanship, he described how it worked. You must seat yourself in a bony armchair, preferably of Spanish style, he wrote. In your left hand, you were to clench a heavy key suspended above a plate. Then, he continued, you will have merely to let yourself be progressively invaded by a serene afternoon sleep, like the spiritual drop of anisette of your soul rising in the cube of sugar of your body. As you drifted off, the key would slip from your fingers and clang on the plate, awakening you. He claimed the brief moment spent between wake and sleep would revive your physical and psychic being. And he cautioned that, quote, a mere second is infinitely too long. Now Dali's mystical-sounding method has been, to some degree, vindicated by science.
we show that the period between wake and sleep is actually very inspiring for creativity. And napping with an object in hand might help to taper into this creative sweet spot.
Delphine Oudiette is a sleep researcher at the Paris Brain Institute. Since childhood, she's found it easy to slip into that zone between wake and sleep.
I try to sleep with a problem in mind and then just let the images come to me. And sometimes I have great ideas.
But she was curious to find out why. So she and her colleagues asked 103 volunteers to complete a series of math problems. Unbeknownst to the participants, there was a quick shortcut to solve all of them. 16 of the volunteers figured that out and were excluded from the rest of the study. The volunteers who didn't determine the secret were asked to emulate Dali's method, but pinching a plastic bottle with their fingertips rather than a key. Some took a Dali-style micronap, some napped longer, and others didn't nap at all. After the snooze, the researchers asked all the volunteers to do hundreds more of these math problems, and they found that volunteers who took micronaps were nearly 3 times as likely to figure out the problem-solving trick compared to those who didn't nap at all.
So that's a pretty massive result. We think that maybe in this phase you have the best of the two worlds, sleep and wake. So you lose the control of your thoughts. So you can have loose associations, make distant association between different memories, and that could be helpful for creativity. But at the same time, you still keep some awareness that might help you to recognize when you have a great idea.
Those who slept for longer periods actually did worse than both those who briefly slept and those who stayed awake. The results appear in the journal Science Advances. Oudiette says the next step of her work will involve repeating the experiment with other creative tasks beyond just math problems.
And to know more about the mechanism and maybe to try to teach people to reach this creative sweet spot.
As for Dali, well, in his book, he describes a variation of his method in which he instructs the reader to, quote, eat 3 dozen sea urchins gathered on one of the last 2 days that precede the full moon. He specified that these sea urchins should be eaten preferably in the spring. May is a good month. Clearly, the great painter has left scientists with much more to investigate. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Welcome to 60-Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. For more than 150 years before 1776, the American colonists had grown used to little direct interference by Parliament in colonial affairs. This policy was known as Salutary Neglect. The term comes from a speech by Edmund Burke, given in the House of Commons in 1775. He said, "When I know that the colonies in general owe little or nothing to any care of ours, and that they are not squeezed into this happy form by the constraints of watchful and suspicious government, but that through a wise and salutary neglect, a generous nature has been suffered to take her own way to perfection. When I reflect upon these effects, when I see how profitable they have been to us, I feel all the pride of power sink, and all presumption in the wisdom of human contrivances melt and die away within me. My rigor relents. I pardon something to the spirit of liberty." However, the 7 Years' War of 1756 to 1763 forced the British to incur many debts. To make matters worse, Britain faced pressure to reduce taxes in Britain. Parliament therefore sought to increase taxes and its control over America, which led to discontent among the colonists. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year 1878, celebrated as the birthday of renowned Illinois poet Carl Sandburg, the youngest of 3 children born to Clara and August Sandburg, Swedish immigrants in Galesburg, Illinois. Carl Sandburg worked as an editorial writer at the Chicago Daily News. He was part of a group of poets and novelists known as the Chicago Literary Renaissance. Sandburg became most well known for his poetry, for which he won 2 Pulitzer Prizes. He also won a 3rd Pulitzer Prize for his biography of his hero, Abraham Lincoln. Sandburg's poems often evoked images and explored themes of the industrialized United States. This was especially true of his 1920 volume, Smoke and Steel. In this collection, Sandburg wrote about workers in Gary, Indiana, and farmers around Omaha, Nebraska. He wrote about railroad workers and steel workers. His words instilled unexpected beauty in these industrial scenes. Sandburg wrote in free verse, a style that did not rhyme. He used accessible language in his poems, making them available to the common man. He would take short tours around the United States, reading his poems and playing folk songs on his guitar. His poems gained a wide popular readership. The opening lines of his poem Chicago so captured the workers and the spirit of the city that these words remain indelibly entwined in the city's image to this day. Hog butcher for the world, tool maker, stacker of wheat, player with railroads and the nation's freight handler. Stormy, husky, brawling, city of big shoulders. To commemorate the 100th anniversary of his birth, the United States Postal Service issued a stamp in his honor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 45 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the low 50s. And cloudy skies throughout the day, winds light and variable, though I should mention it's raining right now, and they say it's not, but it is. So there. Rain likely tonight, though I think it's more than likely since we're expecting about a quarter of an inch. Lows near 45, winds out of the south-southwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour, and expecting about another quarter of an inch of rain tomorrow, with occasional rain showers, winds out of the west-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, highs in the mid to upper 40s. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County stand at 276,008 confirmed cases, and the deceased remain at 399. Pollen is rated as none right outside the window on Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 20 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 1. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.05 inches. Visibility is down to 1.5 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 43 degrees with rain. Paris is 42 and cloudy. Rome is 55 and fair. Kyiv is 36 and cloudy. Kabul is 32 and cloudy. Hong Kong is 62 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 31 and also partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 75 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and cloudy. And New York, is a chilly 36 degrees Fahrenheit. But it is sunny as all hell. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Tucker and Dusan Stoyanovich of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Biden administration announced sanctions yesterday, Wednesday, against Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik, accusing him of corrupt activities that threaten to destabilize the region and undermine a U.S.-brokered peace accord from more than 25 years ago. The Treasury Department also alleged that Dodik has used his leadership position to accumulate wealth through graft and bribery, including by providing government contracts and monopolies to business associates. Oh, wow. Why is that so familiar? The practical impact of the Biden administration Biden administration's actions is that any property or interest belonging to Dodik in the U.S. would now be blocked, though Dodik said he had never done business in the U.S. and did not own property in the country. Really? Also Wednesday, the State Department accused one current and one former senior Bosnia and Herzegovina official of corruption, designations that prevent them from entering the U.S. Dodik, a member of Bosnia's tripartite presidency that also includes a Bosniak and a Croat official, has for years been advocating the separation of the Bosnian Serb semi-autonomous mini-state from Bosnia and having it become part of neighboring Serbia. That would be a breach of the Dayton Accords, the 1995 U.S.-sponsored peace agreement that ended Bosnia's bloody civil war, which killed more than 100,000 people and left millions homeless in the worst carnage in Europe since World War II.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
David Lundgren and Ismail Shakil of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Canadians are angered by people who are not vaccinated against COVID-19, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said. And he also promised more than 100 million rapid tests will be distributed quickly to provinces that are eagerly waiting. Trudeau has mainly tried cajoling Canadians into getting inoculated, and his comments reflect a growing impatience by various levels of government trying to combat the rapid spread of the Omicron variant. Most of Canada's 10 provinces have reimposed limits on businesses and gatherings, as medical professionals have warned that healthcare systems could be swamped. Trudeau spoke after being asked about remarks by French President Emmanuel Macron, who said he wanted to to piss off unvaccinated people. Trudeau also promised a full investigation into footage of passengers snapping selfies, drinking alcohol, and congregating close together on a December 30th Sunwing Airlines flight from Montreal to Mexico. I'm extremely frustrated. It's a slap in the face to see people putting themselves, putting their fellow citizens, putting airline workers at risk by being completely irresponsible, he said. Indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, l'âge tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.